Well, hello, everyone. Good to see you this afternoon, Tuesday afternoon. Apartment Ninja Warrior, just going live here to share with you my weekly thoughts on what it takes to be a successful apartment owner and asset manager in today's marketplace. Definitely have quite a few things I want to share with you that I've been carrying on my mind. But before I do that, if you are on here now, just go and let me know where you are at, where you're calling in from. I'd like to uh, connect with you and have you let me know where you're calling in from. So um, just give you a minute there to get logged in, get logged on, and we'll get started. Awesome. All right, let's see here. Want to make sure we are live in Facebook. Go to there. Facebook. Okay. All right, we are live. All right, so today I'm going to be talking about um, keeping tabs on the property management company. What does that look like? What are the things that you should be paying attention to? What is the pacing of your weekly meetings and pacing of the things you should be talking about, thinking about as you're working with the property management company? I've been sharing a lot about how to pick, how to choose the right property management company. First and foremost, that is like the most important step. You've got to get that right. If you choose the wrong property management company, things can go south in a hurry, and your property can easily get sunk and not be performing well. So do take the time to make sure you find the right property management company. But once you hire the property management company and you bring them online and they start to take over your property, it's not one of those set up, fire and forget kind of situations. You constantly have to keep tabs on the property management companies. You may have a good relationship with the CEO of the property management company, maybe the director of operations, maybe on down the line to the regional manager. But there's nothing to say that just because you have a good relationship with the CEO, that means the manager at the property is going to follow everything and do everything he or she is supposed to do. What I found is that you may be working directly with the regional, but the regional may be covering up a lot of things that is happening between the regional and manager level, or a lot of the things that you transfer to the regional may not get to the manager. Or you may be thinking that everything's fine because your relationship is fine with the top leadership, but the manager is not receiving those instructions or is not following instructions. So this definitely creates a challenge. And just one second here. And so what do you do in this situation? First and foremost, it's so important that you can find a way to get a relationship established with the manager. This may take time, especially because property management companies like to protect their managers, and I can understand why. If we have an owner or asset manager that's very bombarding or overbearing, it gets in the way of the property manager being able to do his or her job effectively on a consistent basis. So there has to be an understanding of this. There has to be an understanding that you just can't go in there, no holds barred, and just, for lack of a better term, top shelf everything and come in and think you're the new sheriff in town. You have to come in to this relationship with mutual respect. You have to come in with a perspective that you're going to take the time to understand what it is like to be in a property management company, to work for a property management company, and to manage a property. The way I do this is ask a lot of questions, show care and concern for your people, and start that relationship with the regional, if that's the person you get connected with. And so once you do that, then over time, the regional may open the doors for you to start to work directly with the manager. You may see the manager coming more onto the KPI calls. You may see the manager answering more questions or stepping in and answering more emails, things like that. And maybe over time, you may then get direct access to the manager because you have developed trust and you've shown that when things don't go wrong, you're not going to go in and just um, tear off everyone's head and get everyone upset, that you are a very professional, approachable, credible, yet fair, firm, yet fair person to work with. I think that is so key and so vital to understand that, and that you also treat the property management company like a partner more than like an employee, and you approach that relationship from that perspective. And when you do that, it warms the manager up to you. They feel more comfortable around you, and also they respect you and they understand what you're trying to accomplish. They understand the things that you're trying to do. And then you start creating this mutual respect in the entire relationship where you all then are starting to work directly with one another, where you get direct access to the manager. And now, this is like the ideal scenario. It may not always happen. You may always have the regional involved in the relationship one way or another. But ideally, it'd be great if you can get direct access to the manager to manage your property and work with the manager to manage your property. Now, once you have these relationships established, it's still so important to consistently be involved and keep tabs on your property, because uh, managers do things differently when they're under pressure or not, I've found. Whereas, for example, say you're going through a tough time with your property, you have low occupancy, or you have to re-tenant the property, or you have to flip the demographic to a different demographic. And it's all about getting your occupancy up in a very quick, orderly manner. The manager may or may not, but may be tempted to just quickly fill up the property. I've seen this happen plenty of times, where you think everything is going fine because occupancy is going up, revenue is going up, but eventually you start to see, in some cases, delinquencies start to kick in. Tenants are not paying rent, and you'll see that tenants that were just lent in 2 or 3 months ago are now on the eviction list and about to get evicted. And the only way you're going to know this is if you constantly review the reports every single week and you keep in track of every single detail every single week. And you ask questions when you see things trending and heading in the wrong direction to show that you're involved, you're seeing things, and you're staying on top of things. This inherently then keeps people accountable. Now, this is one way to do it, but it is not a catch-all, be-all kind of thing. There are many other things that you constantly have to do to keep tabs on your property. I had one case where keeping tabs on the property, rehabbing the property, getting everything leased up, getting our rent bumped, but they were letting in tenants, unbeknownst to us, that eventually became extremely delinquent. We didn't know this because all the tenants were, a lot of them were on using COVID assistance money to pay for the rent. So revenue was still coming in. And everything was fine until the COVID money ran out. And the tenants then had to start paying rent out of their own pockets, in which they didn't have any money to give for rent, in which then the delinquency balance started to increase drastically. And that was immediately a red sign of something's not right. Where then we eventually fired that property management company. But what I would suggest to do is to keep track of any non-market, well, keep track of market, but especially non-market or assistant type tenants and the percent of those at your property. So if you have a 100-unit property, you track how many percent of assistant money tenants that you may have. It could be any type of grouping. So it could be students. How many students do you have on a percentage basis? Could be HUD, or it could be a housing voucher. COVID monies ran out, so back in the day it would have been COVID money. It could be military is another one. You don't want to have typically any more than about 10% military at your property. Keep track of how many of tenants you have in each of these groups, so you know the percent of penetration you have within these groups, so that you're not overexposed in any one area, to manage your exposure overall. And again, you're looking at the delinquency report every week. You're seeing who is delinquent, who has been delinquent, and you check and see when they moved in. And if it was already 2 months prior, and you realize they're letting in bad tenants, and you immediately have to nip that in the bud right there on the spot. A good performing property shouldn't have any more than 2% delinquency at the property. If you have more than that, then there's something up with your property management company on the type of leasing criteria that they're using that is causing delinquency to build. You cannot let delinquency build. This is something you have to pay extreme close attention to. Delinquency has so many primary, secondary, tertiary effects that will take down your property. If you have a huge delinquency balance, it totally tanks your payment culture at your property. The word starts to get out that the manager is lenient on having to pay rent on time in the full amount. Additionally, it just sends a message of, we don't respect the value of the property, or we don't respect each other, we don't respect ourselves. And these tenants then start to damage and destroy your property as a result. And all that money you spent to rehab the property and update it and make it nice and new is simply washed down the drain, as you have to then evict the tenant, rehab the unit that they trashed, and get it leased up back again. And that is a huge, huge problem if you find yourself in that situation. So how do you prevent that from happening? You cannot legally look at the leases, but if you can get some way, some viz on the leases and have spot checks to see who are the tenants that they're letting in, what are their backgrounds, what were their income ratios, what were their scores and their screening scores overall, you can at least spot check, maybe periodically, if your manager allows, to make sure you send the message to the manager that you're not going to allow them to bring on any delinquent tenant. Again, there's a lot going on in this moment because you may be underperforming. You may need to hurry up and lease up, but you gotta do it systematically. You got to do it methodically, where you're not tempted to bring on unqualified tenants. And it's so important that you understand this, because the minute you allow, again, bad apples come in, they will take down the whole bunch. And it may pay off in the short term, but in the long term is going to have a lot more costs that you're going to have to overcome, like I just explained. And that is one of the biggest things I've seen in this business is, again, the company may be good overall. The CEO, the director of operations, the operations manager, the regional, the construction, they all may be good, but it's that person at the desk that you have to keep constant tabs on. And I think there is maybe a understanding this business that you can just simply hire a property management company, let them take care of everything, hop on some calls, look at some numbers every week, and that's it. And I'm here to tell you, that's not how this business works. This is a business. You're hiring people to manage and operate your business, and you have to make sure that they're doing their job right, doing it correctly. Only way to do that is to be in the middle of everything and showing that you understand everything, and actually getting to a point where you're ahead of the property, so much so that you're guiding, leading the team to direct the property in the direction you want it to go. So that's definitely one way to keep tabs. Of course, I keep KPI tracking sheets on all my properties. I have a pretty extensive tracking tool. It's not overly complicated though. It's simply putting numbers into a spreadsheet. But the whole gist of it is that I am tracking exposure on a weekly basis on how many open units I'm going to have, non-rented units I'm going to have on a weekly basis, what my future occupancy is going to be, my future income is going to be, what my renewal percentages are going to be. And I will share that screen here. Maybe difficult to see, but like I said, it's not that complicated, but it does help me track exposure. That's the biggest thing I'm trying to pull from these numbers is what are my economic losses potentially going to be and what I need to do to prevent that. So I'm at 95, 98% pre-leased. I'm getting pretty good renewal percentages. And if I'm not getting good renewal percentages, then maybe I have an exposure issue where I have a lot of non-renewals coming up, which creates a lot of exposure, meaning I'm not going to kick tenant or tenants are going to move out. I have to go find someone new to live in after I rehab the unit and hopefully get it leased up before that tenant moves out and the new one moves in. I look at how many notices were sent out, how many notices were not received to again understand my exposure. I told you about how many on housing. I looked at housing, how many on rental assistance to understand my exposure there. I look at net increase, net decrease, or this is also a way to help me understand projected occupancy right there. I'm looking at all my evictions. A lot of evictions coming up can create exposure, and I should already know that because if I have a high delinquency balance over time, then that will create a lot of exposure. This property is 0.5% last month at the end of the month, so doing really well. I've had a lot of make-readies where I have a lot of demand for make-readies and I can't meet up with demand. I'm going to have bottlenecking there. There's another opportunity for exposure because I can't produce enough units to meet the demand. We're going to have to find a way to overcome that and hurry up and get some units made. I've had a lot of showings, a lot of applications, but not a lot of approvals. Maybe there's something wrong with my marketing. We're attracting the wrong client or the wrong tenant. We have the wrong marketing message going out, and we're not bringing in the right potential tenant. So definitely look at marketing, look at the closing ratios. And then we also use that to understand how much we would spend from a marketing standpoint. We're looking at our reviews. Haven't been that great lately. Definitely have been better in the past. Something you could keep working on with your property management company to make sure you get a lot of reviews. But then prior to that, I am pulling a lot of reports. I'm reviewing all the reports prior to the KPI call, and I'm reviewing basically every single number I can review in this property on my availability report, my AP aging, delinquency report, rent growth analysis, projected occupancy, the P&L, rent rolls, so on and so forth. So the spreadsheet is like the big picture, the reports of the individual numbers, and then again, I'm using that to help me maintain exposure. So again, today is just really the whole gist is to make sure that you hold your people accountable, make sure you show them that you're staying on top of the property and you know the numbers. And we show up to these KPI calls, you're on these calls, you're already talking about the numbers. And a little bit about KPI calls. I don't like KPI calls where you're just regurgitating the numbers that you can see on the sheet with your own very own eyes. Like that is not adding any value to you. The KPI call should be a working meeting where you already know the numbers and you're trying to understand what the numbers mean and where your property is heading because you're looking into the future. You're operating from a proactive versus reactive perspective and mindset. So we get on the KPI call and the manager is saying physical occupancy is X, projected occupancy is X, your income's X, so on and so forth. Again, it's not adding any value. If you prepared appropriately for the call, you've already taken the time to review all the reports, digest all the information, look at all the numbers. Whereas you should show up to the call of understanding why you had favorable, unfavorable variances, and going through the analysis of that and digging through that. And doing this will help you keep tabs with the property manager. And doing this will drive them to take ownership of the process so that when they show up to the call, they have answers, they have solutions, or they have suggestions. And they have been thinking about how to fix the unfavorable variances. When you do this, you walk away with potential solutions to keep your property moving in the right direction and focus as well. So we get on the call. I'm asking questions. I'm actually leading the call, and I am driving the boat on the call, and I'm going through all the reports And before I had my KPI call, I write down my questions on the PDF document. I put a little notepad on there, write my question. It's already highlighted as a reminder so that when I get on the call, I ask the question. And if you do this consistently over time, the manager will know what you're looking for. And plus, you'll just simply tell the person, this is what I'm looking for. This is how we're going to conduct the call. That way they can have answers ready for you. And that way you can have a more productive meeting where you can work together and come up with viable solutions, again, to counteract or rectify your unfavorable variances to ensure you're meeting or exceeding your projected best return at the end of the day. And so that's a little bit about how to conduct a KPI call and how to make sure you keep your property on the right track. And that is all that I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening and listening in. And I will see you again next week, same time, same place. Apartment Ninja Warrior weekly call. Have a good one. See you.